Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I am going to start the 10 Days of Sonic event. Sonic turns 35 in 10 days from today. So, I decided to talk about my favorite gaming franchise. I am not a Sonic YouTuber or Sonic tuber, despite my username being Sonic1111, but since Sonic is my favorite franchise, I figured I'd talk a little bit about Sonic, how I got to be a Sonic fan, when I got into the Sonic community. I just want to talk about Sonic. And I have a few other videos planned, and I'm gonna try my best to release a video related to Sonic for the next 10 days, so wish me luck. Also, most of these are probably gonna be unscripted. That's just how I do things. Anyway, let's go all the way back to the year 1994. And now I've told this story on forum posts before, but I don't think I've ever said this in a video. Anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog was the very first video game I had ever played in the year 1994. My cousins had a Sega Genesis, and at the time, my sister and I were living at my grandparents' house, and my cousins brought their Sega Genesis over to our grandparents' house. And I remember I had it hooked up in the living room, and I was watching one of my other cousins who did not own the Genesis. He's a couple years younger than me. I seen him with the controller in his hand, and he was only like 2 years old at the time, so really he's just pressing buttons. But anyway, someone else handed me the controller, and I was hesitant at first. I didn't know. I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to play Sonic? And I remember getting that controller, the Sega Genesis 3-button controller, and playing through Green Hill Zone for the very first time, and dying to the first moto bug in the level. But that is where my love of gaming spawned from, all the way back in 1994. And I remember that same day I was playing Sonic, and I kept dying over and over again in Green Hill Zone because I was only 4. I didn't know what I was doing. Another one of my cousins taught me the level select codes. So the very first cheat code I ever learned was the level select code for Sonic the Hedgehog. I know that by heart. It's up, down, left, right, A, and start. And for debug mode, it's up A or up C, down C, left C, right C, A, and start. So it's literally the level select code, just with the buttons. C pressed after each up, down, left, right, and start. Whatever. But anyway, going back to that time when I first played Sonic, and my cousins taught me the level select code. You know what I did the first time? Instead of messing around with Green Hill Zone more, I went straight to Final Zone, yes. And of course I died. I didn't know what I was doing. But that's just how I got into Sonic, and how I got into gaming in general. Fast forward to the year 2006, and I discover a ROM hack. Or actually, I discovered that Hidden Palace was supposed to be in Sonic 2. And it caught me off guard, and that's when I learned about Sonic 2 Beta, which is now known as Sonic Retro. And I remember I was supposed to actually be doing some type of project for, like, I wouldn't say, I don't think it was history. I think it was for English class. And this is 2006, so I was 16 years old. And I was sophomore or junior at the time. But anyway, here I was. I didn't have a computer at the time. Or actually, I did have a computer at home for a little bit. But I wanted to look up Sonic instead of looking up whatever project I was working on. That is when I discovered Sonic 2 Beta, which is basically Sonic Retro. And then, I did have an old HP Pavilion at the time that I got from my grandmother, and I had a limited internet access, but at some point I downloaded some ROMs, and one of them happened to be a Sonic hack, Sonic 2 Delta, one of the old builds of Sonic 2 Delta. So that is when I discovered ROM hacking, but I didn't truly know what that meant until a couple of years later. But that was the first Sonic ROM hack I actually ever played. I think I might have mentioned that Mega Mix is the one that got me into ROM hacking, which that's true. We're gonna move on to the next part. In 2008, I joined Sonic Retro. So I've been part of the Sonic community for almost 18 years now, and I got into ROM hacking because of Sonic Mega Mix. And I know this is more or less me talking about how I got into Sonic, how I got into Sonic ROM hacking, rather than celebrating Sonic. But I wanted to start the series off with just little tidbits of how I got into the series, how I got into ROM hacking, and then eventually I will go on and talk about my favorite games, I'll talk about favorite soundtracks, my favorite media, and just to celebrate the blue blur with other Sonic fans. So that's really what I'm getting along with. And also in that same year, in 2008, I created this channel, Sonic Hue 1011. But I didn't really know the direction I really wanted to take with this channel back then. And I really wish I had a concrete idea of what I wanted to do, because this was 2008. YouTube was still relatively new, and gaming channels were like blowing up left and right. But I was 18, freshly out of high school, did not know what I wanted to do, created this YouTube channel, and then my very first video, and you can go back and watch it, was recorded with unregistered Hypercam 2. It's a ROM hack, and I honestly could not tell you what ROM hack that was. And someone actually recently commented on that video and asked me, do you remember what ROM hack that was? I'm like, bro, that was 18 years ago almost. I don't remember. But anyway, so the very first video I uploaded to this channel was me playing a Sonic ROM hack, which is funny. So, and then, I started uploading reversed Sonic music to this channel, and I got a lot of my subscribers from that in the beginning, but then, kind of went stagnant. But anyway, so that's just a little bit of why I love Sonic, how I got to love Sonic, and also somewhere in between there in 2012, I became a tech member on Sonic Retro because I hacked the 8-bit games. So again, like I said, this is more or less me talking about how I got into Sonic, and just a little bit of history with my love for Blue Blur. Anywho, that's just how I got into Sonic, a little bit about my Sonic history, and pretty much I wanted to start this series off very small, and I know I'm doing this at last minute. I should have planned this a little better, but I want to talk about the Blue Blur, and why, and just how I got into the series. And I think this kind of went on a little too long, but maybe I'll tell you why I love Sonic in the next video, or specifically what games I love the most, what media and all that. But I just really love this franchise, and I know I'm not alone, and there's lots of us that love this franchise, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit of my backstory with Sonic, and how I got into Sonic, and just a little bit of my history in the Sonic community. And yeah, so if you like this, be on the lookout for more episodes of the 10 Days of Sonic. And I want to know, how did you get into Sonic the Hedgehog? I want to hear your history. And yeah, so be on the lookout for episode 2 coming next. Be sure to ring the bell for more. Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.